everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the PHNX Coyotes podcast. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah here with Petey and Craig, and in a dramatic twist of events, we are joined by Bob McKenzie live from an en route location.
Bob, are those the pearly gates behind you?
Pretty much. That's my aura. No, I'm the 401 through the Greater Toronto area. I mean, if you were watching the Canadian Open Golf at all, they talked about Toronto area traffic. Well, I'm almost an hour outside Toronto right now, but really bad accident on the 401 and did not allow me to get to where I needed to get to do this show in better surroundings. But the en route with its Popeyes and its Burger King and its Subway and its Tim Hortons and its Starbucks.
What more could you ask for?
That's all you need.
Here we are. So we managed to get a signal and we're here and let's get it done.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the flexibility, and we also appreciate it because it's a busy day for you. You obviously released your TSN Top 96 final rankings. You're always one of the last to do the rankings, so we appreciate you making time for us on that day specifically. So thank you so much. But I guess we want to know from you to start, besides obviously today and this week, what have you been up to the past year since we talked to you around this time last summer?
Not a whole heck of a lot. More outsider than insider now. Don't really, I do the World Junior Championship, so December and January is a busy month for me. These draft rankings take a significant amount of time to put together, and I do a preseason ranking in September, late September, early October. I do a mid-season ranking in January. I do a little mini draft lottery edition in May, late April, early May. And then these final rankings. And other than that, I'll be doing Free Agent Frenzy a week Saturday on July 1st, Canada Day. And I do Trade Deadline Day. I have 4 Toronto Maple Leaf games in studio for our regional broadcast at TSN, and that's basically it. So everything I do for TSN has a start time and a finish time. And it's not like the old days where I had to work 24/7, 7 days a week for 10 months of the year. Life's good. I'm golfing more than I'm talking hockey, but on a day like today and this past week, it's been very busy.
Bob, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this draft, I am curious for the process behind this list. I'd imagine it's countless conversations. If you could take us inside, let us know how the sausage is made.
From back when I was editor-in-chief of the Hockey News back in the 1980s, one of the things people don't realize now is how, I don't want to say how little draft coverage there was back in the 1980s. I want to say how there was none. And I mean virtually none. Regular beat reporters really didn't pay any attention to the draft back then. The draft was a big event in terms of the convention style, where they'd have it on the draft floor at an NHL arena. But in the grand scheme of things, there was no information about the prospects. There was, outside of Kyle Woodleaf, who did Redline Report, which was a private service that teams or consumers could purchase, there was no mainstream thing. And now you see the kind of work that Corey Pronman and others do at The Athletic. You see the Craig Button, who does the mock draft and a lot of our stuff at TSN. And just the reams and reams and reams of detailed data on all the prospects. None of that existed. So I decided back in the mid 80s that I was a bit of a draft geek. And so I started doing a little bit of a profile. I think the very first one I did, I might've done profiled 6 or 8 prospects for that draft. And we started to expand it to the point in later in the 1980s where we did a full blown standalone publication. And back then I started the process of, I was too busy to go out and scout junior hockey players or go to Europe or whatever. So I had good relationships with NHL scouts, and I got information from them. And I used that information to create a draft list and a ranking list. And so now it's still basically done the same way. It's a little more sophisticated, but not a whole heck of a lot more. I survey 10 National Hockey League scouts that know the players inside out, and I get a numerical evaluation for those players, ask them for their top 80 or 90, and then we put it all together and come up with a consensus ranking.
How much detail do you get on the players within that evaluation? Do you get just talking points for each of the players?
Well, the thing I'm most interested in right out of the gate is I just want that numerical evaluation. Once
Okay.
I get that, I don't need to get bogged down or burdened with a lot of detail on why they have a player here. That I do investigate that after the fact, but in terms of creating the list, the first pass is just to get the numbers straight. And I get the numbers straight, and then I go back and drill down on specific players, specific issues, and what have you to try and get a better feel for the draft class. And that's why I've never billed myself as a true draft expert. I'm not like Craig Button or Corey Pronman or any of the guys or any of the NHL scouts who go out and watch these guys day in, day out. Don't do that. I'm certainly not going to do that now that I'm semi-retired. But I am going to, I do have the relationships with enough National Hockey League scouts and the trust of them to share information without really sharing information.
Well, now that you've compiled your list and you've had the opportunity to talk to all these scouts, can you give us kind of the big picture overview of what the 2023 draft looks like, maybe in comparison to some of the more recent drafts, and what are its major characteristics?
Well, I'll start off, let's call it for what it is. It's the Connor Bedard draft. There's so much excitement about that, as there should be. He's an exceptional player. I don't know. I keep telling people I don't know what he's going to be in the National Hockey League, but whatever it is, it's going to be really good and special. Because he's not as big as Mario Lemieux. He's not Eric Lindros. He's not as fast as Connor McDavid. He's not the physical specimen that a lot of first round picks are. But he's got a shot like Austin Matthews. He has a high level of creativity, and the biggest thing he's got is what I call a sense of occasion, and that is when the lights shine the brightest, he does his best work. And we saw him at the World Junior Championship. No draft eligible player has ever dominated the World Junior Championship the way Connor Bedard has. Not Connor McDavid, not anybody. The closest comparison would be Wayne Gretzky as a 16-year-old. And the World Junior was a much different thing back then. But nevertheless, that's what makes Bedard unique, what makes him special. And it's the Bedard draft. But then the next level of the big picture of this draft is that the next 4, 5, 6 guys are very, very good. They're in their own right exceptional talents. So many of them might have been I've got scouts who would tell me that Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlson, maybe Will Smith, Matvei Michkov, depending on the whole Russian factor and the international man of mystery stuff that goes with him, that maybe any or all of those players would have been taken ahead of Yuri Slafkovsky last year. And that's not the damn Slafkovsky with faint praise, but that's just how strong this draft is. And the scouts are really enthused about the first 10, 15, 20 guys. Teams are going to be getting a lot of good players in this draft.
So one of the other big storylines you just mentioned is that Matvei Michkov situation, kind of a wild card in this draft. You noted in your story this morning he will be in Nashville, maybe as soon as tomorrow or Saturday. What are the risks and rewards for going after someone like Michkov? And in your mind, how do you see this playing out?
Well, that's a good question. My understanding is he's going to arrive in the United States probably tomorrow if he hasn't already. And that he's expected to be in Nashville by Sunday or Monday, but he's going to be in a position, I believe, on Monday and Tuesday to do what's already been scheduled, and that is a lot of interviews with teams. The first thing you have to understand about Michkov is wherever he's selected, he's an elite prospect. And I would go so far as to say he is the most elite prospect to have the fewest number of live viewings from NHL general managers, NHL executives, NHL chief scouts, and outside of those scouts that live and are based in Russia. Because of the geopolitical situation, because of the war in Ukraine, the Russian aggression on Ukraine, NHL personnel cannot travel freely to Russia right now. And therefore, we're talking about a player who could be a franchise player in the National Hockey League, and yet it's less than a week before the draft, and virtually nobody's interviewed him. Nobody's seen him play live this year. When I say nobody, none of the general managers or director of player personnel or head scouts who are going to be making the final call on whether to take him or not. They haven't seen him play live this year. They didn't see him at the World Junior Championships because Russia was excluded because of the sanctions. So do they know this player as intimately as they know the other elite players? I would say no, they don't. And that's why these interviews are going to be so important here over the next number of days. By all accounts, based on where he was as a 16-year-old, how he played over the course of this year, he's right in the same conversation with Connor Bedard in terms of goal scoring ability. But there are a lot of really good players like Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlsson, Will Smith, Ryan Leonard, Dalibor Dvorsky, David Reinbacher, and any of these teams that are picking in the top 5, 6, 7, 8 have to decide what risk or exposure do we have on Michkov. He's under contract till 2026. That in and of itself is not a total deal breaker because Vladimir Tarasenko, when the St. Louis Blues drafted him, they knew they weren't going to get him for a few years. Evgeny Kuznetsov, when the Washington Capitals drafted him, they knew they weren't going to get him for a few years. That might be one of the smaller impediments from a pure hockey perspective. What they want to ask Michkov is, you're not going to sign an extension in Russia, are you? You want to play for our team. That, the worst thing that could happen for a team would be to say, we're going to take him, we take him, and then the kid turns around and signs another 3-year extension beyond the 3 years that he's got. I'm not suggesting that'll happen, but boy, if you're an NHL team, you better have reason to believe that's not going to happen. Because otherwise it's, especially when Leo Carlsson or Adam Fantilli or Will Smith or any of these other top prospects are available to you just for the taking. So that's the kind of dynamic that teams are going to have to go through. And obviously ownership would have to get involved in a call like this. Most picks, the general manager gets to make the pick and the owner isn't even involved. In this one, because it's a Russian player at this time, given the current situation of the world and all those other factors we talked about, ownership's got to make the call on this.
Yeah, and I look at Bill Armstrong, if he has a meeting with Michkov, and Michkov says, you know what, Arizona's not one of my top 5 teams. If you pick me, Bill, I'm not coming. Well, that definitely changes the perspective of the Coyotes. But when I look at the X factor of Michkov, the Coyotes picking at 6 and at 12, what I'm hearing from you, though, is this being a top-heavy draft. At 6 and 12, Coyotes fans can expect that the Coyotes can get 2 pretty good players at 6 and 12.
2 outstanding players at 6 and 12, to be honest with you. And you're right. Let's just go back for a second. So everybody's trying to handicap where Michkov's going to go. And let's assume that because Bedard, Fantilli, Carlsson, and Smith are viewed so highly, people kind of assume that, or if there's an outlier, whether it's Ryan Leonard or David Reinbacher or Dalibor Dvorsky, that Michkov is not likely to go in the top 4 picks. Could, but no, I shouldn't say he's not likely. I don't know what San Jose is going to do, but let's presume for a moment that he doesn't go in the top 4 picks. And people speculate, what will Montreal do? Don't really know. What will Arizona do? Well, I don't think Arizona's in a position where they can afford to have a great degree of uncertainty with really good players on the table. The other thing about Arizona is I think Bill Armstrong would be the first to tell you that they're predisposed to try and make the Coyotes a much bigger team. Michkov's not going to do that. He would make you a better team. But as you say, if there's any element of doubt in terms of whether you're going to get him or not, and also the timetable, maybe the Coyotes don't want to wait 3 years, I don't think anybody's sitting there saying, yeah, I think Michkov's going to end up in Arizona at number 6 overall. But Philadelphia is going through a rebuild now with Danny Briere taking over the reins as general manager. And then there's the Washington Capitals at number 8. A lot of people believe because the Washington Capitals are the team of Alexander Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov. They drafted a Russian last year, Ivan Miroshnichenko, who had illness and injury problems and wasn't going to be coming over anytime soon. But the Capitals said, doesn't matter to us. Everybody believes that Michkov, the lowest he'll probably drop is to number 8. I don't know, for 100% certainty that Washington will take him, and I think it'll be important for them to have some conversations with him in Nashville before they make that leap to say, yeah, we would take him if he's there. But in any case, back to the Coyotes at 6, assuming Michkov's not in the mix for them, we have to wait and see who the 5 players taken before them are. Is Ryan Leonard there? Is David Reinbacher there? Is Dalibor Dvorsky there? But those would all be candidates for me when you look at the Coyotes at number 6, especially if they want to get bigger, because Dvorsky's a good-sized centerman. Reinbacher is a 6'2" defenseman, and Leonard's not a huge guy, but he's got a billing as a power forward, even though he's only 5'11". But at 190 pounds, he plays very big, and he plays hard, and he plays mean. And he scored 50 goals on that U.S. under-18 team this year. So that's kind of the universe that they're looking at 6, and then at 12, they're going to get another really good player.
Just one more question on Michkov before we dive into some of those players that you just mentioned. I don't know how much you've taken the temperature of NHL execs or scouts. How much concern is there around Michkov now? And I guess these interviews could alleviate some of that, but how much trepidation do you sense right now on the part of NHL executives?
I think there's some teams that would say, no, we're not going to do it. We're not under any circumstances. I think there are some teams who would say, depending on where they're in the draft, it's a no-brainer. He's a really good hockey player. You've got to presume at some point in time, whether it's 3 years from now or whatever, that he's going to want to play in the National Hockey League. And when he does, he's going to be great. Then there are others who say, you know what, he's a really good player, but he's not the fastest skater in the world. He's not a big guy, but he's got sublime goal-scoring ability. Along with Connor Bedard, might be the best pure goal scorer in the draft. And keep in mind, when these two guys went head-to-head at the Under-18 World Championships in 2021 in Texas, it was very much a 6-5 pick'em as to who was going to be the number 1 overall pick in this draft. But, he did have some injury problems this year. There were some circumstances off the ice that he couldn't control, a tragic one. His dad passed away under very mysterious circumstances.
Yeah.
And so he's, as you would expect, a teenage kid who just lost his dad recently, he's still processing that. It's got to be a really traumatic experience for him. And then there's been stuff written or said in Russian media, people questioning his character or whether he's selfish or is he a team guy and all those things. So there are elements of his whether it's his game or his personality, that to what I just said earlier and what you just reinforced, these interviews are going to be very important because these NHL personnel have not had a chance to sit down and talk to him like they have the other players in this draft. And that's an important part of the process for all these kids. When these guys go to the combine and they do like a gazillion interviews, NHL teams really want to get to know them. And it's a little different, the access to people who know. Like if teams want information on Will Smith or Leo Carlson or Adam Fantilli, there's an endless supply of people they can go to in their universe to get that information. It's not as easy with Michkov, and that's why these interviews are going to be very important.
All right, let's take a look at some of those players that you just mentioned. We're going to get to 3 that you just mentioned because I do think that, they're in that range for the Coyotes, assuming none of those other players ahead of them fall. Let's start with Ryan Leonard, who you just mentioned. Let's dive into him a little bit more and basically just tell us your evaluation of him, what you know about him.
Well, as I said, 5'11", and then they say, well, he's a power forward. And you're like, how many 5'11" power forwards are there in the National Hockey League? And not many. But he plays the game so hard. He's got an NHL shot. He's got one of the best shots in the entire draft. Not better than Connor Bedard per se, but everybody talks about his shot. Everybody talks about how hard he plays, how physical he can be, how mean and nasty he can be if the circumstance calls for it. So that's what we know about him, and I can't imagine that he'll last too long once we start getting into the 4, 5, 6 range.
Next guy we want to ask you about is one of the top defensemen in this draft, and it's David Reinbacher.
As I said, 6'2", great all-around game. Not a pure offensive guy who's going to dominate offensively, and that's not to say that he can't skate and move the puck and chip in with some offense. He's not a physically punishing, intimidating, shutdown defender, but he is above average in both the offensive and defensive side of the game, and has the chance to be a top pairing, top three defenseman in the National Hockey League, and he's the clear consensus number one for most people as a defenseman in this draft.
And then we're going to go to a player that had a really good under-18 tournament, and another centerman is rumored around the Coyotes a lot too, is Dalibor Dvorsky. What can you tell us about Dalibor Dvorsky?
Dvorsky plays a really mature game. He's a strong physical presence. He's very physically mature. He's got a real good mind for the game. His hockey sense with and without the puck is very good. Think about the way the playoffs are played and how valuable it is to have size and strength and smarts in the middle of the ice. Not the fastest skater in the world, but by no means is he at a disadvantage from a speed point of view. The question that has been asked over the course of the year by a lot of people is, what's his offensive ceiling? Does he have a higher offensive ceiling? And because he's been playing against men in Europe and doesn't put up a lot of points in the men's league that he plays in. But when he's been playing with his peers in under 18 competition or at the World Junior Championship, he's generated significant points. He was an underage playing at the Ivan Hlinka tournament a couple of years ago with Juraj Slavkovsky and Philip Machar, the two Montreal Canadian first-round picks. And Dvorsky put up significant numbers with those players and looked not out of place with them. So a lot of people say it's a big five of the draft, that it's Bedard and Fantilli and Carlson and Smith and Michkov. I did have a bunch of scouts tell me, don't sleep on Dvorsky, that it could be a super six.
All right, we want to just ask you about a couple other players for our own files for the draft. One of those guys is Nate Danielson.
Nate Danielson is a 6'2" center for the Brandon Wheat Kings. He's number 16 on our rankings. And I did note in the story that he's a guy who could go higher if there's a team that puts a premium on size. Because, as I say, 6'2" centers, they're hot commodities. And, Danielson's not an elite offensive presence, but he's a good, solid two-way guy that has some offensive ability. So I could see him going higher than 16. And I said the same thing about...
Nope, we just lost Bob for a second in that en route Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I know.
That's okay. We'll try to get him back here in a second. But
one thing that it's been interesting to me now, though, if talking to Bob, is that the last three players that we mentioned, Leonard, Dvorsky, and Danielson. I know Leonard's a little smaller, but three guys that play with size.
Yeah.
And so I think those three players are all going to be available for the Coyotes. One of those guys is going to be there at 6. And I think that that's encouraging to know that there's going to be a really good hockey player at 6.
Yeah. And also reading just Bob's story this morning, if you missed it, like everyone's been saying, this is the big 4, the big 5, but there were a few instances where people said, no, this is actually the big 6, which is promising news for the Coyotes. So we are trying to get Bob back here in just a moment. Let's see if we got him back. Let us know if you can hear us, Bob, but as we work to get him back, definitely go check out his story. It's right up on TSN right now. He tweeted it as well, and I retweeted it from my personal account, but also an in-depth dive of how he does the numerical process, which he mentioned earlier in our interview with him.
You know, we're talking about big centers now, and we've talked a lot about some of the key players in the Coyotes pipeline not necessarily being big guys, whether we're talking about Clayton Keller or Matthias Michele or Logan Cooley. At some point, you probably have to counter that. We know Bill loves size anyway, but at some point you have to counter that. So that's maybe why you look at a bigger center to try and balance that out a little bit.
You talk about Logan Cooley and Clayton Keller and Michele and the smaller forwards with high skill. I think they've got that they've checked that box already. I think it is time to start looking at some more size. You've got Lawson Krause, you've got McBain, but if you want to have that bigger team, there are options that are going to be there at 6. It's encouraging that we've been so frustrated that this team didn't pick one of the big 3 or the big 4, depending on how you throw Michkov in there. But there are still very good players at 6, more so than we're at 6 a year ago. And the Coyotes presumptively picked the number 1 best player, if you redrafted right now with Logan Cooley, that he may be the number 1 pick. So it's 2 back-to-back drafts where they're going to get very good players. And here in the top 12, they're going to get 2 extremely good players. So this is what moves the needle forward in the rebuild for sure.
And that's what's exciting. And that's why we're asking about players like Nate Danielson that we just asked ranked 16 in his rankings. But as he mentioned, if a team wants to go for size and draft him earlier, like I think the 12 pick is just as interesting as the number 16 pick in this draft.
And it's a heck of a lot more interesting than getting a pick in the late 20s, isn't it? Which, yeah, I mean, they gambled here, right? They gambled that they were going to get a high pick from Ottawa. I understood why they were doing it at the time, but it was a bit of a gamble. But the difference in the value of the number 12 overall pick versus 28, I mean, it's massive if you look at the history
especially
of the NHL draft. Yeah,
especially in this
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while we wait for Bob to hopefully try and get back on that en route Wi-Fi, he mentioned that he's retired. He's been doing a lot of golfing, and I might have to send him to Pins and Aces if he's not already rocking their stuff, either the apparel, but they also have amazing accessories as well, such as the beer sleeve.
Phoenix one, but that Phoenix.
The Phoenix one that we got, the custom one for the Keep It 100 Golf Classic. Amazing polo. But they also, like I mentioned, the beer sleeve is amazing. So check that out. You can check out pinsandaces.com. Use code PHNX to receive 15% off your first order and get free shipping. That's pinsandaces.com. It looks like we might have some success. So should we try to bring him back in? Let's see. Yes.
Do we have
audio? Can you
here?
hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, we're back.
Got to run to A&W for a quick teen burger. Some Timbits.
No, we've had all sorts of technical challenges today. Can you see me okay here?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
You got your Timbits, and you're all set now for round 2.
We actually only had one more player to ask you about, Bob, so we were close. I'll let Leah get to that before we get cut off again.
Yeah. All right, last guy we want to ask you about, it's actually a teammate of current Coyotes prospect Connor Geekie, and that's Zach Benson.
Zach Benson is a little bit undersized, 5'10", 5'11", but an incredible engine, as the scouts like to call it. His motor revs really high, unbelievably skilled, top 10 talent all day long. And because his engine revs as high as it does, he's famous for getting to the inside, to the scouts like to say, to the dirty areas to score goals and make plays. And there might be some scouts that back off on the size a little bit and maybe he slides out of the top 10. But if he doesn't, it shouldn't be too far, because I just think this is a player that is so gifted offensively. He's so creative, and he's got such a burning desire to play a lot bigger than he is. Some scouts do worry that because he plays as hard as he does at that size, is the durability going to be there? But I think in the grand scheme of things, there's just too many offensive tools to ignore, and that if he doesn't go in the top 10, it won't be much later than that.
Bob, with this ranking and these numbers, this draft more than any other feels like really unsure about what's going to happen, partly because of Michkov, and clearly we know Bedard's number 1, but from 2, 3, 4, all the way to the Coyotes pick at 12, there's, depending on size, position, and what you want, there's a lot of things that could happen in that first 15 picks, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. It's because there's so many options. There really is. There's so many good players. Now, there's not a ton of defensemen. As we mentioned, Reinbacher is number 8 on our list, could go higher. Axel Sandin Pellikka is number 14 on our list. And then after that, you do get a run on defensemen ranked outside our top 15. You've got Dmitry Simashev, a big 6'4", defense first Russian defender at 19, but maybe the Russian factor comes into play there a little bit. You've got Tom Willander, a Swedish two-way defenseman who's number 20 on our list. And then you've got a Russian defenseman, Mikhail Gulyayev, undersized at 5'10", but still a really talented guy. So that's the question mark in terms of the number of defensemen. But there is going to be a lot of personal preference. You want a big guy. Guys like Danielson and Hanzik can move up. And for that matter, there's a lot of small guys in this draft who could go a lot higher than they're ranking on our list. I think of Andrew Crystal, who plays for the Kelowna Rockets. He's a very good friend of Connor Bedard's, from the same from Vancouver as well. And he's I'm not saying any stretch of the imagination, he's Connor Bedard, and he didn't have a very strong U18 in April. And he kind of went down a little bit, and he's small. He's only 5'9" or so, but he's in that universe of skill that, at least in the same solar system as Bedard in terms of skill, along with Benson, another British Columbia kid. Gavin Brindley, who plays at the University of Michigan. He's 5'8.5", but he's got a heart that's the scouts are absolutely raving about, saying the kid's a warrior, and we've got him at number 30 on our list. He could go a lot higher than that, but he's 5'8.5", and we saw in these playoffs, there's always a premium put on size, but we also saw the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Jonathan Marchessault, so isn't the biggest guy in the world either. So it's a balancing act, and different teams have different needs and desires, and whether position comes into it at some point in the draft, or it's a size question, or some teams need an injection of skill, and that's when they start looking. It doesn't matter the size of the draft.
All right. Well, Bob, we can't thank you enough for your time, for being flexible,
And
for
patience.
calling us from an en route along the 401 there. And sincerely, we appreciate your time and your insight as always. So thank you.
Well, sorry there was many challenges as we ran into, but such is life on the 401.
Exactly.
Get home
so
safely,
much.
Bob.
Yes, thank
Thanks
you
so much.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much to Bob McKenzie, not only for it's like trifold, because not only did he join us on the day that his rankings came out, he was downtown Toronto in the TSN studio this morning. He had a meeting that ran late, got stuck in the 401 traffic. If you've ever been to Toronto, it's as bad as LA. That is not an exaggeration. So to call us from a rest stop is amazing. And we are
Yeoman effort.
so incredibly grateful that he lent us 30 minutes of his time. So Bob, thank you so much. I know a lot of people wanted to know about Bobby Margarita, but we're going to tell you about Illegal Pete's margaritas, because that's where our loyalty lies. Illegal Pete's has some of the best margaritas, and good thing, because every week, Margarita Monday at Illegal Pete's, exclusive to Arizona locations, $3 margs all day, every Monday. Nothing brights up that Monday mood more than soaking up the sun with a few margaritas. And don't forget about Taco Tuesdays, $2 tacos all day, every Tuesday. Enjoy your favorite chicken, pork, and veggie tacos for just $2. Swing by and start your week off the right way at Illegal Pete's. And as always, get the queso. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Well, let's chat about what Bob had to say. I think we should start actually by just reading through quickly his top 15 list this morning, which we have here. So obviously at number 1, there's Connor Bedard, 2, Adam Fantilli, 3, Carlson, kind of, same old. But then you move on. You got Will Smith, number 4, Matvei Michkov at 5, Ryan Leonard at 6.
That's the Coyotes slot right there.
And by the way, this is by no means a mock draft. This is simply rankings based on his.
And Craig Button will have a mock
system.
draft on TSN tomorrow.
So. 7 is Dalibor Dvorsky. 8 is David Reinbacher. 9, Zach Benson. 10, Gabe Perreault. 11, Matthew Wood. 12, Colby Barlow. 13, Oliver Moore. 14, Axel Sandin Pellikka, and 15, Braden Yeager. I'm just reading the top 15 for the sake of where the Coyotes are picking. Again, if you want to go read the whole list, you can go on TSN's website, or Bob tweeted it earlier today as well. But any just takeaways from anything that Bob had to say?
I'm just, first of all, I'm glad we got to ask about some players that are right in that range where the Coyotes are going to be picking at 6. It was planned. We actually have some intelligence on this show to have some salient content, but I'm fascinated by the Michkov thing. Like I hear every person I talk to, I hear another point made, and I am really fascinated how this is going to play out, and all those conversations that he's going to have at the draft with teams. Now this is a lot of times like the first conversation with him in more than a year. And like you said, nobody has seen this kid play live in more than a year. So it's insane to have it come down to, I mean, your decision could hinge on this interview, right? Oh, he convinced me in this interview. Haven't seen him in a year. We've got all these intangibles. It's just, it's a situation like I've never seen before in the draft.
And when you go to the Coyotes too, they're going to ask him, would you come here? And if the answer is no, to Bob McKenzie's point, the Coyotes can't miss at 6.
I agree.
So if there's any uncertainty from the kid, and this is my belief, not theirs, and their scouting, or I don't know where they have him ranked at the Coyotes room, but if there's any of that uncertainty that I'm going to resign or I'm not playing for you guys, you cannot risk that pick at 6. That's my opinion. Now, they may look at it as this kid is potentially the second best player in this entire draft, but we're going to roll the dice at 6. That would surprise me. So I think the biggest question mark of this 2023 draft is Michkov, because we've talked about Will Smith since when? December?
Yeah, when we put
and we said no, there's no,
Smith
and then we can start going, oh, there's no way at 5. He'll be in top 5 for sure. And then you don't know if somebody's valued Reinbacher and needs a defenseman more than they need Will Smith at the middle of the ice. Will Smith could still be the Coyotes pick at 6.
Yeah.
Could be.
And you and I have both had conversations with people who said, well, Reinbacher might not last the top 5.
Yes.
So there's some feeling there too.
Yes.
Look at what happened last year when New Jersey jumped up or they took Nemec, and then all of a sudden all these players were sliding down, and the Coyotes are sitting at 3 with more choice than we ever thought they would. The same exact thing could happen with Reinbacher.
Yeah. So you're talking about Leonard, which we've talked about. We've timed Reinbacher, Dalibor Dvorsky, Will Smith. Like, there's going to be a very good player, better than players at 6 over the last 4, 5, 6 years. This is a better draft.
Yep.
And so I think that this number 6 pick, coupled with a guy that was number 1 redraft from last year with Logan Cooley, this is what you need to have happen to have longer term success. So I'm really excited. And you know what makes it more fun is you just don't know. The uncertainty going into this draft makes this a lot more fun. Other than Connor Bedard, I'm really not sure on what happens from 2 through 215. So it's going to be fun.
And again, I wonder about size. I wonder if they start thinking we need to get bigger up the middle. Because I mean, I'm not saying Logan Cooley is small. He's just a shade under 6 foot, but I know size matters to Bill. In like Bob said, when you get to the playoffs, what are you looking for? And Dvorsky is an interesting player in that, right? And I've heard evaluations of him all over the map, which is a little concerning. Some people don't think that he has that offensive upside to be a top 6 center. But like Bob said on the show, when he's played against his peers, he's put up very good numbers. So another guy to consider at that spot.
Yeah, it's funny because, and I said this earlier already, but just how everyone that said, oh, it's the top 5 and the Coyotes are on that outside bubble looking in. But the more and more we talk about this, the more I'm just happy the Coyotes are in the top 10 at this point. Like we've already heard this draft be touted to be one of the deepest drafts in the past few years. So, and even what Bob said about how Carlson, Fantilli, Michkov, all those guys last year would have been number 1. And that just goes to show, I think, the talent depth, because, you know, it's not always apples to apples comparing number 1 picks across all the years. It certainly isn't this year. So then when you look at, you know, all those guys spread out over this draft class, like the Coyotes are going to get a really good player at number 6. And I'm really excited. And at this point, I'm sure we've talked about the guy they're going to pick. We don't know, but I'm sure we've talked about him.
Probably.
But I don't know what direction they're going to go, but I have faith that it will be the best choice for
Blake
the
Wheeler?
team.
I remember that day. I was thumbing through my 100-person draft guide, like, who is this guy? Like, I don't think you can do that anymore. I think with the social media and the worldwide, the world shrinking every year.
Zetterberg and Datsuk going as late as they did. It's just
that
absurd.
just doesn't
that would
happen.
never happen now. Yeah.
Somebody come up with a surprise kid in the top 20 would
There's
be
always
amazing.
someone who jumps into the first round, but
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
but it's going to be someone that we've heard of. I think
maybe
we'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
And on the note of a deep draft too, when I was talking to Dan Marr, who's the director for Central Scouting for the NHL, he said he thinks this draft is 50 to 60 deep before you see a significant drop. And we're not talking like high end talent 50, 60 deep, but he does think there are 50 to 60 players in here before it's, well, you don't know yet. That's interesting to hear.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially considering in the second round they pick at 38th overall. So they have 3 picks in
Ryan
that top
Jankowski
50.
made that point to me as well. At 38, we think we're
still getting a good player.
Yeah, it's a great haul when you think you're going to get 3 really good players.
And who knows what they'll do with those 4 picks in the 3rd round. Maybe they try to move up to grab another 2nd round.
Maybe.
There's
or fake a trade.
Give us something we can talk about.
We have a trade to announce.
4.5 hours live.
We have a trade to announce. Boo. Not in Arizona, though, Gary. We know you won't get booed here. All right. We have a couple other little news and notes to get to. But first, I want to tell you all about Circle K because they have the best snacks around. Obviously, they're all over the valley. And, of course, make sure you go and grab a Polar Pop when you're there because it is getting hot out and nothing just cools you down quite like a Polar Pop. As PD always mentions, this cup doesn't sweat. It fits in your cup holder, and they're just fabulous. So check out.
Sweat. I love that.
I mean, it's
important.
It's important.
That's key.
It's very important. Check out Circle K. Make sure you're not missing out on all this great stuff. Right now, you could text PHNX to 31310 to join their SMS subscriber club and get a buy one, get one free offer on 32-ounce Polar Pops. Head to circlek.com/store-locator to find Circle K's near you. Yesterday was the first day of summer. I'm sure you guys noticed since you woke up with the sun and it's the longest day of the year. But to celebrate the first day of summer, OG's released a brand new flavor, pink lemonade, and Sean has actually tried it and said...
Best flavor they have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Orange creamsicle is unbelievable, but this pink lemonade, and honestly, it tastes like sour gummy worms, and that's like a top 3 candy for me. It's flawless. I was ready to eat like the entire bag, but
yeah, don't.
Enjoy responsibly.
Yes. I didn't have one yesterday because I was still at work, but I did take a sniff of the bag and it smelled amazing. So I can't wait to try. Limited edition. They are available now. Fresh, tangy lemon and a hint of red berry and plenty of sugar, of course. So OG's doesn't miss when it comes to flavor and effect. Get your pink lemonade gummies while you can. Check out OG's online at ogsbrands.com and on Instagram at ogsbrands. You can also find their products at your local dispensary, but you must be 21 or older to purchase. All right, couple little news and notes to wrap us up here, and we'll start with Michael Carcone. This was an exciting one. The Arizona Coyotes have signed Michael Carcone to a 2-year, one-way contract. Really happy for him. Obviously had a big season with Tucson last season, setting a Tucson Roadrunners franchise record in goals, assists, and points, and then played a few games with the Coyotes, but thoughts on this one?
I think he was happy. I got a chance to talk to him yesterday evening. I think the one way was a big deal. And then to have some term, right? It's not a 1-year deal. That meant a lot to him. He wanted to stay here. You saw what he said about this dressing room. Best dressing room I've ever been in.
Yeah.
Everybody does. Yeah. We've heard that from a lot of guys, how they get along so well and they do everything together as a big group. That's the kind of culture you want to create.
He's a guy that works really hard on and off the ice. I think he's 27 years old right now, so he's more of a veteran present when he does play games down in Tucson. But I think that his ability to fit and jump into what Bear asks of his players with his tenacity, his work ethic, and his offensive upside. Let's not kid ourselves. 2 years ago, he played 21 games for the Coyotes, got 6 points that year. He's the guy that can help offensively, and he's going to work hard. So he fits into the mindset of Andre Tourigny team. I think it's a good signing, whether he does provide a leadership role down in Tucson at times, or if he's able to help that bottom 6 role here for the Coyotes.
Yeah, and he's on a one-way, and he's not waivers exempt. So my assumption is that
he's playing.
He's here.
Which is, goes to, you talk about Zach Cassian and the moves they made there, that maybe you'd rather have a guy like this in your lineup. Yep, playing in that same role.
I hope it's his time. I mean, he really did the most you could possibly do at an AHL level last season, and I mean, amazing guy. And honestly, he kind of reminds me of Connor Garland in a sense, a little bit undersized, someone who's really paid his dues in the American League. Also, friend of the show. We've talked to him quite a few times, but we saw. Michelli was that guy the season before he had his opportunity to come up. We've seen what he's done. So I'm hoping for Carcone that this is now his time. He's the next guy coming up from Tucson. Not saying he's going to be Michelli, but to be just an everyday NHL player on the Coyotes roster. So it's really exciting.
I wasn't because I was bored.
No, it's okay. It's been a day.
It has been an interesting day so far.
A lot going on behind the scenes. All right, another piece of news. Connor Geekie. So first of all, there's a lot going on with the Winnipeg Ice.
No doubt.
They are no longer the Winnipeg Ice. They are relocating to Wenatchee, Washington.
Which is southeast of Seattle, I think.
Okay.
Not too far.
That was a shock to me last week or whenever that was announced. And then yesterday it comes out that Connor Geekie's coach with Winnipeg, James Patrick, was let go, and they will have a new coach heading to Washington.
Yeah, this has been in the works for a while that James Patrick probably wasn't going to be with the team past this season. I think this is a mutual thing. I know a lot of people have asked me about the relationship between Connor Geekie and James Patrick. I don't think it was the best to begin with. I think they reached common ground late last season, and part of that was Connor Geekie playing a more responsible game than he was early on, and that's what James Patrick was demanding of him. Kind of an old school coach, maybe not, the sort of the new wave coach that is more of a communicator, hand on the shoulder kind of thing, but. I think the belief is that this could be good for Connor Geekie. Obviously, we don't know who the coach is going to be yet, but
yeah, we look at. I want to say
a good thing for him.
One thing, James Patrick, old school coach.
Yeah.
Oh, here it
his
comes.
last year in college. Which did you know where he went to college? North Dakota. He was a Fighting Sioux. He was a defenseman.
Yep.
Led that team in points. Who was second in points as a forward on that team? Dave Tippett.
Wow.
So he was a former
back
teammate
around.
of old school hockey guy Dave Tippett. So Patrick and Tippett 1-2 in scoring of the Fighting Sioux. We've talked about it here that a coaching change can give a kid a new life, and a coaching change, playing under certain coaches, can be tough. And I don't know. I know him as a person.
I don't want to throw
No, he's a great person. James
he is. And he's been phenomenal in interviews with me too. Really
Great guy.
insightful when I talk to him.
And so they've had success in Winnipeg.
They had a great run this past
some
season.
players play different under different coaches. That's all.
Yep.
And it's no knock that the guy can coach or not coach or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just maybe this change of scenery gives him a new lease. So good for Connor Geekie, and I expect he'll play another year junior before we see him here running through the development ranks in Arizona.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's all been draft talk today and future prospect talk, I guess, even with Carcone and Geekie. So I love this time of year, and we are just days away from the NHL draft. Less than a week now from round 1 week from rounds 2 through 7. Can't wait, and we are counting down our time in Nashville with 10 days of Tootsies.
Oh, boy.
And it's day 9.
Day 9 of 10 days of Tootsies. And I will tell you this, Leah, I went, this is all about self-promotion, and this is all about me.
Okay.
And we talked yesterday, we had a little
Glad
tease.
you've learned what this industry is about, Peter.
Yeah, I get it. So these are all pictures over my 20 years of popping into Tootsies for maybe 1 or 2 or 10. That's how I go in. Go in usually on my feet on the way out. It's questionable.
Gosh.
Sometimes crawling, sometimes on my knees. But so this is a follow-up to yesterday's picture with Louis DeBrusque. This is me on the 9 days of Tootsies.
10 days of Tootsies, day 9.
Day 9. This is me outside of Tootsies. You see how happy and excited I am before I go in? This is me getting ready to go into Tootsies for a lovely night, and I do need a haircut. There's no question. My glasses might be from the 80s, even though this is probably the 2000s.
A different color before you drink, by the way.
Yeah, I know. This is the before, and as opposed to we will do before and afters. Anyway, that's day 9 of 10 days of Tootsies. Can't wait to stop in the Orchid Lounge.
Mike said, can we get a Twitter thread with all the Tootsies photos? Mike, asking you shall receive. I will make sure that goes out over the weekend. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to go to Tootsies. I can't wait to get to Nashville. We leave Monday. And I know a bunch of the diehards.
It's almost Sunday
Craig,
when we're leaving.
Stop it.
Buddy, why are
y'all are flying with me? I'm just
You
saying.
had a great flight to Europe.
I did
Smooth.
to Europe, yes.
I don't.
That's okay. We just need to get there.
Okay.
Who's our travel agent? We were supposed to not fly with Craig. Right. Actually, we should have. Craig and I should have drove.
We should have got the John
You and I
Mayer
should've
bus.
That would have gone well.
You and I should have drove.
Cross country. How bad would it have been? It wouldn't have been that bad. We could have done it.
Driving?
Yeah, we could have done
The
it.
music choice would have been a problem because I would have wanted to listen to old books on tape, like from the 30s and 40s, like Sherlock Holmes and Suspense and The Whisperer and
30s and 40s. What?
Yes.
Oh my
The
God.
Whistler. No, The Shadow Knows.
All right.
For 32 hours, couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do that.
Over
Okay.
under
But
on.
I do envision the bus, right?
Over under.
Imagine us like on a Partridge Family bus.
She wants
Did
to
people
go.
even know what Partridge Family is,
Yes,
Petey?
I actually
you know?
do.
Okay, there
Look
you
at
go.
that.
Come on, get
Over
happy.
under on how many drinks PD has at Tootsie's at our first go. Set the line.
I'm just gonna. The
Just
over under
set the line.
2.
Ooh, over.
That thing's
Hammer.
gonna be responsible.
Hammer.
He's gonna be responsible.
Hammer the over.
I can have 2 or 3 done walking in the
We
front door,
gotta
walking out
work,
the back.
Petey. We gotta work on this trip.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh boy. Well, that's not on BetMGM.
Take the over.
But there's plenty on BetMGM. pretty much it's MLB, WNBA, and I'm sure soccer all the time. But go ahead, check out BetMGM, play the Swing for the Fences game daily. It's super fun. And if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, make sure you use that code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our Arizona audience, you'll get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you use the bonus code PHNX. You can check out the show notes for full details. And now you can listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
You know, it's been a week where, getting ready for the draft. I think, and I know I said this yesterday, but I just want everyone's confirmation. We're drinking Four Peaks on tomorrow's show. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yes. This is a Friday before we go to the draft.
Yeah.
We need to
and maybe all weekend
start
as well.
training.
Yeah. So check out Four Peaks. You can buy Four Peaks wherever you buy your beer. I recommend for the summertime. It's getting hot. The Wow, the Peach, amazing. Obviously, PD, he's always a kilt lifter guy. But whatever you choose, whatever your taste in beer is, Four Peaks has something for you. And you should also check out their 8th Street Pub. Amazing food and drink as well there. So you can check them out at Four Peaks Brew or at Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest at Arizona's hometown brewery. You must be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and please drink responsibly. All right, anything else before we head out?
Nope, just look for a goalie story. For you diehards, I've got something coming on the goaltending situation, both here and in the draft.
I did have one. Aiden Stanky sent me a DM in Twitter just now, and he was watching live from Vancouver with Bob, and he said he wanted to point out that Bob, on one of his wrists, he was wearing a Humboldt Strong bracelet.
Oh, awesome!
And just want to recognize that he was supporting that cause, and means a lot to the people of Humboldt. He had friends that were in that team, and he just wanted to say thanks to Bob McKenzie for recognizing and representing the Humboldt Strong.
Yeah, great call out, Aiden. Thanks for pointing that out. Absolutely. Like Craig mentioned, goalie story coming for the diehards. So make sure you become a diehard so you can read that. You can also get access to our Discord, 20% off merchandise, events, a Dobson Ranch card, a Mountain Mike's $50 Mountain Mike's pizza voucher. I mean, just so many perks to becoming a diehard. And this box here on the table, that's what you get in the mail when you become a diehard. It has all sorts of goodies in it. You can get a free shirt and hat every year when you sign up. So join our family and become a diehard. And the diehards coming on our Nashville trip, we cannot wait to see you. We have a ton of fun stuff planned. So really looking forward to it. In the meantime, we have one last show in Phoenix tomorrow, same time, 11 a.m. before we head out. And we'll get you our Nashville schedule, hopefully next week. So early next week. We're still ironing out some things, but we're really excited about what we're going to be able to do there next week. So extremely,
I'm just sitting here hoping
exciting.
It's not live from the Phoenix airport.
Shh. You guys
I didn't even think that until Craig put that out there in the universe.
You guys need to stop this.
No, it's going to go seamless.
Yes.
Hey, I generally speaking have pretty good travel.
Yeah,
so.
I
You
do
have
too.
great
I have
travel.
unbelievable travel.
I had a smooth trip last week.
So that all that positive energy outweighs his negative karma.
And we're also like not on a complete joke of an airline. I'm not going to name names.
Air
Which
Canada?
airlines we're referring to.
Air Canada?
Oh, hey. You name names if you want, but I'm just saying we're not on a complete joke of an airline.
There's Wait, I'm not even going to get into it today. We'll have plenty of time to get into it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I'm just saying.
Let's go.
It's a powerful curse.
Let's just go.
Enough. Stop.
We can start driving.
Everybody in the chat.
Could.
Everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. Hit the like button on this video. If you're listening on audio, be sure to leave us a review. And sincere thanks to Bob McKenzie for joining us in crazy circumstances, but we do appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter at SPetersHockey, at Leah Merrill, at Craig S. Morgan, at Sean_DePods. You can follow the show at PHNX_Coyotes. Be sure to subscribe to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel so you never miss when we go live. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow.